This is the Ramana Maharshi satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke. I'm not a guru or a teacher. I just love Ramana's teachings and so want to share it. I'll be reading and commenting on the Ashtavakra Gita, chapter 3, verses 1 to 7. In these verses, Ashtavakra is delighted for Janaka's realization, but sees inconsistencies. He fires off a series of confrontational verses about attachment to worldly pleasure. 3.1 Having realized yourself as one, being serene and indestructible, why do you desire wealth? Just as imagining silver in mother of pearl causes greed to arise, so does ignorance of the self cause desire for illusion. Having realized yourself as that in which the waves of the world rise and fall, why do you run around in turmoil? Having realized yourself as pure awareness, as beautiful beyond description, how can you remain a slave to lust? It is strange that in a sage who has realized self in all and all in self, this sense of ownership should continue. Strange that one abiding in the absolute, intent on freedom, should be vulnerable to lust and weakened by amorous pastimes. Strange that knowing lust as an enemy of knowledge, one so weak and nearing death should still crave sensual pleasure. Let's explore these Ashtavakra Gita verses. They express what Ramana Maharshi teaches. In these verses, Ashtavakra challenges Janaka about attachment to worldly pleasures. Verse 3.1 Having realized yourself as one, being serene and indestructible, why do you desire wealth? This verse emphasizes the realization of one's true nature as the singular, undivided self, which is serene and eternal. Once you recognize this indestructible essence within yourself, the pursuit of material wealth no longer matters. The self, being complete and whole, has no need for external possessions to fulfill or enhance its nature. Being full and complete, nothing more is needed. For someone engaged in spiritual practice, this verse points out the futility of seeking fulfillment in external objects when true contentment is found within. It encourages you to focus on inner peace and self-realization rather than being distracted by material pursuits. This is a big step in your practice. 3.2 Just as imagining silver in mother of pearl causes greed to arise, so does ignorance of self cause desire for illusion. This verse uses the metaphor of mistaking mother of pearl for silver to illustrate how ignorance of your true nature leads to desire for illusory objects. Just as the mistaken perception of silver incites greed, ignorance of the self results in desires for transient, unreal things which are ultimately not satisfying. Understanding this helps you recognize the root of your desires and attachments which stem from a fundamental ignorance of your true self. Not realizing that you are full and complete, you feel like something else is needed. This verse highlights the importance of self-knowledge in overcoming these illusory desires. 3.3 Having realized yourself as that in which the waves of the world rise and fall, why do you run around in turmoil? This verse describes the self as the vast ocean where waves of worldly experiences rise and fall. Recognizing yourself as the ocean, this unchanging, tranquil base, there's no reason to be disturbed by the temporary ups and downs of life or the appearance and disappearance of the waves. For you, on the spiritual path, it serves as a reminder to stay centered and undisturbed by external events. Remembering that you are the ocean encourages a deeper identification with the stable, eternal self, rather than the fluctuating circumstances of the world. 3.4 Having realized yourself as pure awareness, as beautiful beyond description, how can you remain a slave to lust? This verse highlights the contradiction of recognizing oneself as pure infinite awareness while being ensnared by lust, by desires in the world. The self, being perfect and beautiful beyond description, has no need for the fleeting pleasures of the senses. Knowing yourself as full and complete, there is nothing to lust after, nothing to desire. This calls on you to transcend sensory desires by deepening your awareness of the true inner beauty and fullness of the self. It emphasizes the higher fulfillment and happiness found in spiritual realization over any temporary external pleasures. 3.5 It is strange that in a sage who has realized self in all and all in self, this sense of ownership should continue. Here, Ashtavakra finds it paradoxical that a sage who has realized the unity of the self with all things still experiences a sense of ownership. This sense of mine contradicts the understanding of oneness where there is no separation between the self and the world. Realization is moving past ideas of I and mine to the fullness of the self. This verse urges you to examine and relinquish your attachment to possessions and things and activities of the world. It stresses that true knowledge of oneness negates any sense of personal ownership or attachment. The knowledge of oneness negates any ideas of I and mine. 3.6. Strange that one abiding in the absolute, intent on freedom, should be vulnerable to lust and weakened by amorous pastimes. Ashtavakra expresses surprise that even someone dedicated to the pursuit of liberation who abides in the absolute can still be swayed by desire, lust, and sensual pleasures. It highlights a disconnect between their spiritual aspirations and their worldly desires. This verse is a call to align your actions and desires with your spiritual goals. It emphasizes the need for vigilance and self-discipline in overcoming lower desires to maintain the purity of one's spiritual focus. 3.7. Strange that knowing lust is an enemy of knowledge, one so weak and nearing death should still crave sensual pleasure. This verse addresses the absurdity in clinging to sensual pleasures despite understanding that they obstruct true knowledge and spiritual growth. It highlights the tenacity of sensory desires even when they are recognized as hindrances. These are long-held mental habits, difficult to overcome. This verse is a stark reminder of the need to prioritize spiritual wisdom over fleeting pleasures. It calls for a conscious effort to overcome desires that distract and divert you from the path of self-realization. In these verses, Ashtavakra says, recognize the futility of worldly desires and sensory pleasures once you realize your true nature as the eternal, serene self. Align your actions and focus with this deeper awareness, transcending temporary illusions and attachments. So inquire, know yourself, and be always free and at peace. And now a video from Nome, Reality and Illusion.
That which is truly yourself is entirely formless, without differences of any kind. It is undivided existence, undivided consciousness, undivided bliss. It is timeless and ever existent, silent and unchanging. It ever is, just as it is, one without anything else whatsoever. It is the infinite, the eternal, known by the name of Brahman, the vast absolute. This is the truth about you, what you are, what is real. The idea of difference, whether conceived as a multiplicity of thoughts or conceived of as an external world, is solely an illusion. Wise sages declare that all this is only an illusion, and also all this is only Brahman. What does it mean? It does not mean Brahman is illusion. The illusion of difference of any kind rests upon the perceiver of it. This is determined by the definition attributed to I. To know the reality, pure absolute existence as it is, therefore, the Maharshi instructs us to find out, who am I? If the definition of the perceiver is with the body as an embodied being, the illusion, seemingly real but only an illusion, will appear as if an external world. If the definition of the perceiver is more subtle, such as the mind, the illusion will appear as states of mind, modes of mind, and the great multiplicity of thoughts. In short, however I is defined, this will appear. Indeed, the very notion of this is utterly dependent on the idea of an individual I. The perceived depends entirely upon the perceiver. For liberation from illusion and its consequent suffering and bondage, knowledge of reality is necessary. It cannot be approached in objective terms, for that also is illusory. Nor can one find a real cause for the illusion, for after all, illusion is illusory. If illusion is illusory, then we are free, and always free, and never truly bound. The bondage is referred to as an illusion, not because it is real, but only because it is seeming, until such time as the thorough inquiry is made in which case reality comprehends itself. That is, you know yourself. That is the knowledge in which Brahman knows Brahman. For you are in truth Brahman. Hence the Mahavakyas, Ayam Atma Brahma, this self is Brahman, and Tattvamasi, that, meaning Brahman, you are. That which is perceived as illusion is only the existence itself, just as in the case of a rope, mistaken in dim light to be a snake, is actually only the rope. There's nothing to the snake, but the rope is there. There is nothing to the illusion of differentiation, but one solitary, indivisible, illimitable existence is there, and that existence is your existence. To know it, know yourself. If you treat that existence as if it were a goal removed from you, to be objectively attained or lost, such is illusion. Such is the notion of differentiation. It rests upon the perceiver, or rather the conceiver of it, the one who imagines differences. In your own experience, in your own being, inquire, who am I? What actually is your existence? Can it be a body? If you are not the body, where are you? Who are you? Can it be a collection of thought, a movement of thought, termed the mind? The one who knows the mind cannot possibly be the mind. If you are inconceivable, how to know yourself? Where conception ceases, true knowledge begins. Such knowledge is the very substance of Sri Bhagavan's inquiry, self-inquiry. Question yourself, starting and ending with your own existence. Who am I? If you inquire in this way, you will find how rootless, seedless illusion is. Differentiation, duality is not true. Your own existence is the proof of this. Know your existence as it is. If you know your existence as it is, you will find that Maya, illusion, has no existence. With differences vanished, your own being is the perfect fullness. That is Brahman. That is yourself. That is who you are. Knowledge of the self is knowledge of reality. If you think reality is something else, other than the self, to the slightest degree, something divided, differentiated, what is the definition being attributed to yourself that you imagine in such a manner. Question: for inquiry destroys ignorance and thus reveals knowledge, in the same way that light is said to destroy darkness.
All right, and now let's take a few minutes and inquire. You exist, and you know that you exist. Inquire. What illusions am I currently chasing, mistaking them for true value? In what way do I allow external events to disturb my inner peace? What sensory desires am I still attached to, and why? What aspects of my life do I still feel a strong sense of ownership over? Who am I? What is my actual identity? What am I? What is the nature of my existence? What actually exists? All right. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. And namaste. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next week. And until then, good meditations, good inquiry.
Thank you, Richard.